Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Two Wizards and a Mic. Welcome to the show. I am Shane,
And I am Andrew.
and we are here to talk about all kinds of things D&D because we're old. We know everything, as old people do, and we enjoy doing it. So I'm glad you're here. And today we're talking all about player tips for delving into dungeons. But before that, any updates on the Kickstarter?
Yes, we're at just over looking live here, just over 70%, 379 generous backers. And Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern is the halfway point.
Nice.
So we're really good, over 70, just over 70% with 16 days to go. And yeah, people all from all over the world, as we were talking about last time. I find it endlessly fascinating to find out where all these people are from. And I think the leading city right now is still Los Angeles for
Oh,
backers.
wow.
Yeah. And then Toronto, Vancouver, where we are, and Toronto are next. And then, yeah, and then in the countries, it's interesting. We almost have as many backers from the UK as we do from Canada, and
Nice.
we have a lot from Germany. Um, and then Australia this week, Australia, New Zealand, the Netherlands. We had quite a few new backers from those places.
Well, it's pretty awesome because, small publishers deserve the love. And of course, I'm biased because I want Andrew to succeed. And there you go. And of course, speaking of Andrew, this podcast is sponsored by Cawood Publishing at worldofmere.com. And of course, you can go there and you can learn all about the Kickstarter. And or if you're already on Kickstarter, do a search for Cawood Publishing and you'll find it there as well. Um, I'm kind of jazzed. 70%, man, that's awesome.
Yeah, and the really cool thing that I've mentioned before is that we're way ahead in the process. Today I was doing editing and formatting for the manuscript, which is
Nice.
currently 157 pages, 45,000 words. And that includes all the monsters and the trap section. All of the stretch goals are that's already all there, which we hope to reach. But I have to make the book, with that in mind. And
Nice.
yeah, it's really moving along. Usually it's taken at least 2 or 3 months after the Kickstarter to finish the manuscript and the editing. It will likely be finished when the Kickstarter's done.
Awesome. I mean, how many Kickstarters can really say that? The ones that I've sponsored, not many.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's true.
I think that all Kickstarters should finish their product before they are funded, and that way people don't. I mean, I've heard so many horror stories. But anyway, that's neither here nor there
Yeah.
because you're ahead of the game. Today, uh, what is the number one tip for people when they're a player and delving into their dungeon for the first time, or even their 20th or 100th time? What is that first thing they run into?
Well, the number one tip I would give would be recon and
Really?
strategy.
Oh, what?
Yeah.
Planning? Not just
Yeah.
barreling in head first?
Yeah. It'd be the opposite of Leroy Jenkins. It would be scout ahead, send the rogue or the druid to scout ahead, or your familiar or your animal
Yeah.
companion if you're a ranger. Yeah, scout ahead, make a plan. It's more important in a dungeon almost than anywhere else because you could be there for a long time
Yeah. Yeah.
and you might not be able to get out easily.
I know that as a player, when I've been going into most actually closed in spaces in general, I know that our group tends to be a little more on the cautious side. However, there
Mhm.
have been a couple of times where somebody has either triggered a trap, or has failed miserably on a stealth check, and suddenly you have like a bugbear up your butt. But yeah, most of the time that's actually really good advice, because most of the time, I think by default it's like, okay, who's gonna go first? All right, who's at the front? Oh, I don't know, my stealth isn't that great. Okay,
Mm.
so and so should go in. Okay, cool. Uh, yeah, that's actually not the first thing I would have thought of either. As a player, to be like, okay, guys, what are we doing? Who's gonna be prepared? We think there's
Yeah.
gonna be a something such in there. So, oh, that's really cool. That's very cool. Yeah,
I think it's something that happens sometimes too, but I think you're probably going to be more successful if you do it consistently. And I
yeah,
actually really like that part of the game, the strategy part, and yeah, I think it's really fun. Um, of course, light is going to be an issue for most dungeons, so having torches, having some characters who have dark vision, that's an issue for sure, because torches eventually burn out, lanterns run out of oil.
yeah.
Dark vision is not what a lot of people play it as. It has limits to it. And if you have a combination, your dark vision gets wrecked, because you can't have dark vision if somebody's holding a torch next to you. You can't use it.
I, it's funny you say that, because that is one of the tips that I have always thought about. Is when you are going in, forget the dark vision. Just because you have it doesn't mean everybody does. And
Mm.
there have been so many times where we've been playing, and it's like, okay, so torches are up, and it's like, well, now I can't see 60 feet in front of us. I can now see 30. Thanks
Yeah.
for that. Yeah, I mean it's a trade off, and you have to basically everybody join hands. Let's not okay, step or I step. I mean that's the only other way. Um,
Yeah, it's really part of the dungeon crawl style too of adventure, because you have this methodical pattern of listening and checking for traps and then moving ahead slowly, and really that actually works. Part of the reason that works and it happens is because of the light issue too.
well, especially when
Um,
people are going, okay, I'm going to tap the floor in front of me, and I think a whole bunch of times I often wonder, okay, you're doing that to look for traps, but
mhm,
traps are not always on the ground. They're elsewhere. They can be anywhere.
mhm.
And aside from like, I don't know, collapsing floors, in hindsight, it's like, why would you bother? Just do a stealth check and ask the DM to be like, okay, I'm going to be going through, I'm going to be looking at the floor, I'm going to be paying attention to the walls, I'm going to go real slow. Uh, because yeah, tapping the floor is like the default for our players
Yeah,
anyway.
yeah. Well, there's some really basic traps, right? Like the pit trap and tripwires and things that you could trigger with the pole, or the floor just collapses.
Yeah.
Um, so another issue is marching order. Usually you want to have your warriors, your tanks at the front, because that's where most of the action is, but that's not always true. And you want to have, your people with lower armor class towards the back. But you want to consider it because of the next point of close quarters. There are a lot of close quarters in dungeon crawls. There's lots of melee combat. It can be hard to move to reach a creature or to reach one of your party members. So it really helps. Like it can even help if, like, say you're a wood elf who has 35 feet movement instead of the regular 30, or you only have 25 because you're a halfling, a gnome, or a dwarf. Those differences actually can make a huge difference. It can be life or death. So it's something
Well,
to consider, um, of where you have people in the party and where do you want to move to, because it can really make a big difference.
it goes back to our episode on traps, which was episode 40 something, maybe 30 something, probably I think 40 something. But one of the things that you and I talked about was marching order and having traps or even wandering monsters, which we didn't talk about too long ago, approaching from the back.
Right.
Because it's always like the assumption that in front of you is where the danger is going to come from, but you know, dungeons have more than one path, and you might have some large creature wander up right behind your magic user and tap them on the shoulder and say hi. Uh, and then of course everyone has to scramble to turn around. Uh, but uh, but it's still important because most of the time, I think the danger is definitely going to come from where you're going to. But there's evil DMs out there that want to keep their players on their toes.
Yeah, I think it's a fun change for sure. Then another issue is rations and water. So you want to make sure you're really prepared with that before you go in because, you know, potentially you could be there for days or weeks. You never know.
Yeah,
Um, and then mapping. So in the old school version, the players actually mapped out where they went, and some people still do that, and that's pretty fun. Um, but if you don't do that, you want to make sure your players have a map, or at least you're paying attention to where you're going. So that's
yeah.
a really important part, so you don't get lost and you know your way out.
Well, there's that balance between having the battle map or some sort of setup in front of you, and your characters can see everything. There's no fog of war, or whatever they call
Yeah.
it. But I think there's kind of a really interesting adventure element for players when they're delving through dungeons. Specifically, maybe a map of the outdoor regions is okay, but when you actually go inside, I don't know. There's something kind of, I guess, because we've been playing it for so long, there's a romantic notion in my mind about, well, we can see stuff in front, we
Mhm.
can see stuff in back behind us, but we shouldn't be able to see the whole area. Like there's times where you've played with maps where the maps are covered and you reveal them because you have tiles on top of them or something. Um, but I don't know, that kind of takes away from somebody actually sketching it out while they're going. Um, I guess on a battle map, having the players draw it out, maybe like the DM describes it and we draw it, kind of thing, might
Yeah,
be
that's
a
that's
middle
how that's
ground.
how it started. That's
Yeah,
at the beginning of D&D, that's what it was like.
yeah,
And I'm the same. I like revealing it, and then once the whole dungeon has been opened, then I might show the whole map or the whole battle mat. But I like revealing it piece by piece. Again, to me, that's a dungeon crawl. That's the
well,
style.
exactly, and that's kind of how it should be. But I think a lot of people are spoiled by somebody just throwing a pre-generated map on the table and saying, okay, here's where we
Yeah,
are, where in reality your characters have never been there, your
yeah.
characters don't really know what's going on.
Well,
um,
it's a very video game thing, right? Like in Skyrim, you can just switch
True.
over to the map of where you're going. Although it doesn't show where you haven't been yet, does it? No,
No, it doesn't.
no. But it does help if you get really lost.
Well, and I think that's where the romantic notion part comes from. Is that
Mhm.
I like the idea that people could get lost. I get lost in real life every once in a while. It's like, where the hell am I? Why I don't know where where's the thing I'm supposed to be going to? But in D&D, I mean, to me, there's this whole idea of like, if your players get lost, God's not going to come down and say, turn left. It's going to be like, I'm sorry. Where are you guys going? Oh, we're going to turn around and go back the way we came. All right, cool. You can do that. But I don't know. It's I think ultimately it's probably one of the hardest things to do is in delving through dungeons specifically. So, but uh, but aside from that, we have classes that are helpful in the in in the deep dark.
Yeah. So features of classes. So very simply for the barbarian, they're really useful because of all the tight quarters and the melee combat. Their rage feature and their reckless attack. Both of those are really useful. It really helps to have a warrior of some sort with your party, at least one.
Yeah, I agree. I remember we had a party a while ago, and nobody was a fighter. Nobody was a barbarian.
Yeah.
And then I think we changed right before, because you commented, you guys don't have a blah blah blah
Yeah.
blah blah.
Yeah, it does help quite a bit. And then bards, like there's a lot of healing for 5e classes. So the healing that bards have, and just overall that bards are jack of all trades, they can do everything. So having a
Yeah,
bard is pretty useful. Like we were just saying, you need to have a warrior. If you had a bard who was part sort of a warrior, that would cover you, because they can just do so much.
right.
Cleric wise, obviously the healing, we won't get into that because that's going to be helpful anywhere. So the trickery domain, there's a couple of features. One called invoke duplicity when you create a duplicate of yourself. So that's another really useful one, as well as the cloak of shadows where you can become invisible. So invisibility, hiding yourself are even more useful in a dungeon than in other places. So I think
I
the
agree
trickery
because
cleric, yeah,
oh,
trickery
definitely.
cleric would be great.
Yeah, because I mean, most people in dungeon crawls just they go in first without really thinking. And strategy like that, like the duplicity, I instantly thought of a la Arnold Schwarzenegger in the original Total
Oh yeah.
Recall. He had that device that made a duplicate of himself across the room, kind of thing, which was kind of neat.
Oh yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
which could
Yeah.
become useful and give you all kinds of options as a group to okay, well, we shouldn't just go in because we've already had 3 battles today. We're too wounded. We
Mhm.
need to find a place to rest. So yeah, things like that could help.
Yeah, and
And
then
druids.
the very warrior type clerics like the war domain and tempest, those would be really useful.
Yeah,
The druid with their wild shape is endlessly useful, and definitely could be useful in scouting ahead. I know Shane, you've been a druid a few
I
times, and
I do
you'll
that a
turn
lot. I will be a
yeah.
spider and I will and then come back and tell everyone what's going on. That's actually yeah, I mean that to me that's like probably one of the most useful things of the druid in terms of dungeon crawls because
Mhm.
you know people shouldn't know what's coming around the corner. I guess I'm really beating on this whole idea, but we shouldn't see the map. We should just be completely blind, and DMs should do that all the time.
Yeah, I know often, like you said, you turn into a regular spider. So you can be a regular spider or a regular rat. Those are very small. Um, a frog, you could even, I think you could turn into a frog. Like you could turn into a very small creature. I know once you turned into a spider and you went under the city gate into a settlement.
Yeah, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. Then fighters again. We talked, already about melee combat and being able to absorb a lot of damage at the front of the party. The monks, I think, would be very useful because of their movement. They can move very quickly. They're very agile. They can deflect missiles that are shot at you, arrows and crossbow bolts. They're able to dodge and evade, like kind of like a rogue. Um, and then they also have the melee combat. So I think a monk is really a good one to have in the dungeon.
Surprisingly,
Well,
somehow
and also one of the
it is not one class that pops to mind instantly.
I know, same here. I never really thought of it, but you also think too of all the things that could be rusted, like by magic or by a rust monster. Well, monk, it doesn't matter. They or you get disarmed. I actually more and more I like this feature I have of some monsters of ours that they can disarm creatures and toss their weapons 20 feet, 40 feet, 60 feet. So I really love the monk in that they always have their weapons with them. They always have their hands and their feet, right?
It's so true. It's so true.
So paladins, endlessly useful, all the healing they have, but also these auras they have. So the regular paladin, for all paladins, they have the aura of protection, aura of courage, and then the oath of devotion has the aura of devotion, and Oath of the Ancients have the aura of warding. So all of these help characters that are near the paladin, and that's perfect for a dungeon crawl. Perfect.
Well, yeah, because the in the dungeons are always kind of the darker creatures. You know, you might run into vampires, liches, etc. Um, hopefully not that often, but still, those types of things are definitely going to be a huge benefit. Like, there's no way. Actually, I haven't played a paladin for a while. I kind of think maybe that's for the next adventure.
Yeah. They're probably one of my two favorites for sure. Um, they also, you get all these bonuses for your saves if you're near them at higher levels, and you mentioned too dealing with dark creatures like undead and fiends and things, so they're
Yeah,
perfect for that. Oath of Devotion have the turn they can turn undead as well. Another reason to have a cleric too in a dungeon. Then rangers, if you're the beastmaster subclass, you have your animal companion. So as we've mentioned, that is very helpful for recon. And a rogue is endlessly useful, just in many ways like the monk, with their sneak attack, because an ally is close enough so they get sneak attack. Their cunning action feature, so they can use a bonus action to disengage easily or dash. They have their uncanny dodge in close combat. They can avoid some of that damage, and then evasion. If a spellcaster targets you in a small area, the rogue is the one person who can actually survive. And then the thief subclass, you have your fast hands, opening up locks, your second story work, so to climb, and then being very stealthy with supreme sneak, and the arcane trickster with their magical ambush ability. So rogues are really useful in a dungeon.
agreed, agreed.
Yeah, and you can stealth ahead, check things out. Um, if things get bad, they can use a bonus action to dash back or disengage. Yeah,
I like that those characters are so versatile. Like that class is so versatile in all those kinds of things. And then in our show notes, we have the next one is sorcerer, which just says one thing: stay out of melee combat. And like we've
yeah,
already had like get in there, paladin, get in there, thief, and
yeah,
dodge around, and it's like, dude, I'm sorry, you're the sorcerer. You got to go stand over. Actually, can you go around the corner because we don't want you to get hurt.
yeah. No, for sure, that's right. In our notes here, sorcerer and wizard, stay out of melee combat as much as possible. Especially even more in a dungeon, because you can get caught in that tight space, and
Yeah,
your
which is
armor
which has
class is
happened a
like
lot.
yeah, it does. Your armor class is like 11, 12, 13, 14. You're in trouble, right? So yeah, that's the only note
The
I have
enemy
for sorcerer.
sneezed.
Yeah,
Sorcerer takes 10 damage.
yeah, and we're gonna get a new character. um yeah, that's the only note we have for sorcerer. Warlock, so the Arc Fae subclass pact, the Fae Presence and the Misty Escape. So those are useful again, moving around in a
Yeah.
dungeon, small, close quarters. And then the Great Old One, the Entropic Ward. So that can be
Which
useful in
I
a
don't
dungeon.
actually know. I'm not familiar with that. I don't think I've played Great Old One.
Yeah, we haven't had. I think we only had one person choose the Great Old One. So this again in close quarters. So they can use reaction to impose disadvantage on the attack. So this is another feature, because of the close quarters, could be very useful. And warlocks can use some even better armor than they can actually use light armor, unlike wizards and sorcerers. So a warlock is a little better suited than a sorcerer or a wizard. Although, as we'll mention now in wizards, there are many bonuses for having a wizard. One is not a bonus, which is staying out of melee combat. Although I have a high elf wizard, and high elves are proficient in swords and bows, so my high elf wizard actually has a sword. So there are some exceptions. The Abjuration School, you're able to ward off damage for yourself and others, so that's a useful wizard. conjuration, bringing in um, other creatures to help with the battle. That can be really useful. Enchantment, school, you've got the hypnotic gaze, which would be good in close quarters. Evocation, the ability to sculpt spells around your party and other creatures, that that could be really useful. Again, the illusion school could be really useful in a dungeon to create illusions around the party. Um, and then finally, the transmutation school, doing minor alchemy, and then the transmuter stone, which gives you a lot of features, including dark vision. So that one could be a bonus as well. I don't think we've had somebody at a high level because for wizard with this, because I don't remember anybody ever using it.
I don't recall anyone using it now.
Yeah, but it can give you dark vision. It can increase your speed by 10 feet, give you proficiency in con saves and resistance to different kinds of damage. So it's extremely useful. Yeah, so there are many classes that have these different features to help in dungeons. For sure, all the warriors, the fighters, the rogue, surprisingly the monk, the trickster cleric, and then a few of the wizards could be really useful.
I think anything where kind of into the I just thought of what is the class that does the builds and tinkers with stuff and makes little creatures? That's the
That could be the alchemist, which they still don't have as an official class.
okay. Well, then I won't talk about it because it's not official.
Well,
I just thought that might be useful in a dungeon crawl because if you could actually create like a familiar or a construct that kind of follows them around or something, that could actually be
yeah.
useful.
Oh, I think it's a good point because we're talking about ways of making your game better. So it can be from whatever edition and it doesn't have to be official.
Oh, well, all right then. In your face, wizards.
So
Because
Artificer,
we're the real wizards here.
oh, there's our new T-shirt.
Um,
Yeah,
equipment.
Artificer definitely can be helpful for sure.
Artificer. That's the word I was thinking
Yeah.
of. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, we have somebody who has a high level one, and she often has her construct fly ahead and scout, and it can also attack. I think it spits acid, and yeah,
Oh,
so
that's
that's a
right.
useful one.
Oh, that's an adventure I don't think we've played in a while. But yeah, I do recall that. Yeah.
Yeah. Then races. So with races, having dark vision is definitely useful, and I know many people who choose the half elf just for that reason. They want to play human, but they want to be able to see in the dark better. So they're going to play a half.
And have spells and a weapon. And that's the only reason I've done it. It's like I've got to have a sword, and then I want to be able to like hack somebody with a sword and then blast them with something else on the next turn. So yeah, I'm guilty of that.
All right. Looking at equipment, which we did a while ago, we did a whole show where we went into depth about it. This time we'll briefly just talk about the items that could be helpful in a dungeon crawl. And actually, this is going to be a section in our book, our Monsters of the Dungeon Kickstarter. We're going to have a little passage on this as well. So torches we mentioned, and a tinder box, obviously to light the torch or to make a fire in the dungeon. Rations, which we've mentioned, the 10-foot pole, which Shane mentioned, you never go wrong.
Never.
Rope, and then chalk to mark where you've been, to help you get out, or to send messages or leave messages. Leave a message for the
Which is, I mean, that's important for like thieves and stuff because they can use
yeah
that ability, and druids as well have their ability to be able to leave messages for other druids and things.
yeah.
But yeah,
You could even have a wizard
definitely.
use mage hand to write with the chalk, and then You could
I
leave
hadn't thought of
messages
that.
for the enemy, like we're somewhere in here, we're coming to get you.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Um, and then the piton and the hammer. So here we're in mountain climbing territory where Shane and I are. So
Yeah.
these metal spikes that you can hammer into the walls or a cavern to climb and to access different areas, those could be useful. Um, a steel mirror if you want to peek around a corner. Oil if you need oil for your lantern or your lamp, or if you want to put it on the floor to use it as a some sort of obstacle. You could light it, as well. Thieves' tools, alchemist fire, and then ball bearings. I can't believe I didn't put it down, but because I, to me, it's number one is caltrops. So ball bearings and caltrops are great obstacles to leave on the ground. Um, if
Yeah.
you want to, especially behind you, if you worrying about an attack from behind. A bell to send messages or an alarm, a chain. There's many reasons you can use a chain, a crowbar, and then a grappling hook. If you want to, have your rope be even more useful, have a grappling hook.
Exactly, especially when you have those moments where nobody can fly, nobody can turn into something that can fly. Uh, and, 'cause there's been some great moments where we've played and we've done some sort of weird aerial thing because there's a druid that's able to like turn into a something that can fly and carry other people. But yeah, imagine getting to a wall that no one can get over. You know, we
Yeah.
have to walk 10 miles that way or 10 miles that way, or can we go through? No, nobody has it. Okay, well, can we climb? No, no one can climb. All right, forget it.
Mhm.
Let's just all go back to the tavern.
Yeah. Or even a magic wall, because all those magic walls that are part of spells, they all have limits to them.
Yeah,
So you could potentially climb one of those, as long as it's not the wall of fire. Um, there's also equipment packs. So there's a specific pack called the Dungeoneer's Pack in the Player's Handbook for 5th edition, which obviously has many of these items. And
yeah,
then the Burglar's Pack and the Explorer's Pack could be useful too. All right, so we've looked at class features, races, equipment. Now to end, we're going to look at spells. I think the obvious one is the healing for clerics and many of the classes. That's a given because it will be useful in any environment.
yeah.
Most of what I found are wizard spells that are really useful. One druid spell I think of right away is Pass Without Trace. That is useful. I'm surprised it doesn't have a limit where you have to have ground, natural ground, because a lot of their spells you have to be in the natural environment for them to
Yeah,
work.
yeah.
But this one, it doesn't say anything like that. So yeah, like technically you're allowed to do it. I don't know if I would let it go, but technically you're allowed to do it. Um, Wizards, now there's so many spells that are useful. So light, knock, so getting through a locked door, pass wall, an awesome spell. I can't believe more people don't use it. It used to be a big deal. Like a lot of people back in the day, um,
Yeah.
they would choose this spell, and now I almost never see it. So
It kind of feels cheating, like you're cheating somehow. I mean, I'm glad you mentioned it because I have never really. I look at it. I'm like, nope, I'm good. There's better spells I could use, but yeah, in a dungeon environment, that actually is powerful, very powerful.
yeah, well, it has limits on it. It's not like, and
I'm
other
gonna go to
than
the
other
other
than
side of the dungeon.
yeah, yeah, you can do that. Other than like cheating on your rolls and cheating on like making your character, to me, the rest of cheating as a dungeon master, I can always counter it, right?
True.
Like, so I never really, I don't even think about that because, yeah, That's
The,
not. I
the
mean,
next time,
you can always just put a red dragon in the next room, or have the ceiling collapse, or have a meteor hit their house. Like, so you want to make an interesting story. So why,
there could always be a red dragon in the next room.
yeah,
I love that. Knock. We've unlocked the door. Did you check for dragon fire? No, I didn't. But
yeah,
there was no needle in the lock.
yeah. You definitely always have to check for dragons before you advance. All right, another great spell, Mage Hand, a cantrip
Yeah.
like the light one. Actually, a few of these are cantrips, really useful. Um, being able to carry things around, move things without touching it. Dancing Lights is a really good distraction spell and another cantrip. Minor Illusion, another cantrip, another good distraction. These are really good at, again, if there's not as much light, especially the Dancing Lights. The Alarm is a good one when you have to rest in the dungeon to set up the alarm spell. Another movement issue with the movement issue is Expeditious Retreat. Can make you move much better for a limited period of time. Fog Cloud is a great escape one to have in the dungeon, and that one I've seen a lot uh, in the 70s and 80s, and then still today. People love Fog Cloud.
You can never go wrong with fog cloud. I mean, being able to obscure like fog cloud, uh, a swarm of insects or whatever that one is called. Uh,
Insect Plague.
but those kinds of things sometimes you kind of. This doesn't happen that often, but there are times where really you should run away. You
Yeah,
should get out of the situation, and
yeah,
those kinds, like even darkness, like cast darkness by the door. Let's get the hell out of the other door.
yeah.
Those kinds of things rarely get talked about because you know
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. There are times to turn around. Maybe not run away from the whole adventure sometimes, but maybe you want to get out of that chamber. It's just
yeah,
not a
just
good
that
scene.
I'm only thinking of
Yeah,
the encounter, the immediate thing, because that,
yeah,
yeah, running away from like let's go back to the tavern, which sounds cool,
yeah,
but if you've been in a dungeon for 4 days, it's completely not practical.
yeah. So yeah, like Shane mentioned, Darkness, another good one. Grease. So this one isn't used very much. A lot of those sort of things, like this is another obstacle to create. So people using oil on the ground to make the ground slippery, or maybe to set on fire. These kind of things are, yeah, these things are more from the original D&D and haven't been used as much. Thunder Wave is a great close quarter spell to blast people out of a room or knock them over, blast them into the sewer. Thunder Wave is still popular, never gets old. Everybody chooses
No,
Thunder Wave.
I love Thunderwave.
Yeah,
Thunderwave, the fact that you could do some, if you roll really well, you can do some decent damage, but also the fact that you push people away or push
yeah.
whatever you're at away. Because the other thing too, and I think we've done it once because I think I did it out of the desperation because I think a couple of people were down and I wanted to move somebody and or something, and I ended up moving a player and not the not the creature I was going for.
Yeah.
But my intention was, but I think inadvertently the player actually survived and was able to get out of. Basically, they disengaged from
Mm.
the thing they were fighting because they were getting pummeled. But yeah, there's little things like that that I like about that spell.
Yeah, you did. It wasn't too long ago you did that, actually. I remember that very well. Another great one is Arcane Lock, one that's not used much again, but a good one if you need to take rest or you just want to um, block people following you. Cloud of Daggers, another good one in close quarters. Flaming Sphere, again in close quarters, really useful. You can do a lot of damage, and some spells the enemy can get away from them and they just stay there, right? Like the Flaming Sphere. So you can move, and you can move these things too, but it takes you another action. So that's more difficult if you're in a really close environment, close quarters, where maybe they can't move away, and the flaming sphere is just continuing to burn right next to them, right? So,
So true.
or the cloud of daggers as well.
Oh,
Invisibility,
Cloud of
anything like,
Daggers. Oh yeah. Oh,
yeah,
that's a great. Oh, cool. I
anything like
yeah.
invisibility, hiding, all that, that's obviously really good. Levitating, I think again could be useful in a dungeon environment. And locate object, especially if you're searching for a particular item. So there
Yeah.
are many spells I think that would be useful, mostly on the wizard list. I actually thought of one right now too, though, is that the paladin can cast Find Steed. And that one is useful, I know, because my paladin got into a bad situation when he got cornered in a tavern when one of the other players decided to basically throw me under the bus. a player, a player who did not return ever again. But he was working for the Zentarium, the evil faction or shady faction anyway in the Forgotten Realms. And
Right.
this tavern was filled with Zentarium, and he blew my cover. And the only reason I survived was because I cast Find Steed and I got out of there on this magical mount. I smashed through the door and just took off and escaped. So there are a few spells here and there that can be good. Like, yeah, so, oh, actually, it takes 10 minutes to cast. I wonder if the DM actually let me do that. I think he did. I think I did do it. I think I did wait 10 minutes. And then when it appeared, I just jumped on it and I was gone.
I could just totally see the DM going, okay, Andrew. Oh no, you're still okay. We're everyone. Okay, next player because he's still doing the thing.
Yeah.
He's still casting that spell.
Yeah. That was the same adventure where my character fell in love with someone and then he found out she was a dragon. And he basically was like, I'm fine with that.
That's okay. I could totally do that.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Um, is that all the spells? That's all the spells.
Yeah.
You mentioned. Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
I thought there was
These
one
are
more.
our simple dungeoneering tips to help
And
you survive.
out of all of these tips, I think the most important one is the very first one that Andrew mentioned, which was plan something. Don't dive in. Take a peek, come back, and then make a plan to it. Because if you take a peek and don't see anything, all right, okay. But if you go in, take a peek, and then decide, gee, yeah, I better, yeah, we better. There's a dragon in there. I looked through the keyhole, and there was a large red dragon. I'm not sure what he's doing, but perhaps we shouldn't go in.
Yeah. I think always it's useful, especially in a dungeon because you're in a structure that it might be hard to get out of it and it's going to be really easy to defend probably for whoever's in there. I know one time Shane's party in the adventure we had in the Southern Territories in the world of Mir, you found out about
Ooh,
the bandits who had a floating castle and
yes.
you found a way to get into the castle and then you just went in and you were looking for the bandit leader, but as you made your way through this castle, which was floating above the ground, filled with bandits, you discovered that the leader of the bandits was a beholder, was not a human, and all you know what broke out. So it would have been difficult to do recon for a place like that, but you could try to, you could have a druid who shape changed. I don't think you had a druid in that party.
I don't think we did. We were pretty.
Yeah.
I know that I played uh, in that adventure. I think that was the one where I was. I think a couple of different barbarians
Yeah, I think you were
at some
still
point.
Raven
Trying to
maybe
remember,
then.
did we steal griffins or something to get up to the
You
thing? I
did.
mean,
You did.
even if we got up there, we could have been a bit more subtle and scoped things around, flew around. We went straight to the landing bay
Yeah.
rather than taking the time to say, okay, all right, let's how we do a few loops around. Just take a look, see if we can see inside the windows, or see if we can,
Yeah.
or whatever. And
Yeah.
you know,
You could have questioned the bandits who were the Griffin Riders who were going back and forth. You could have interrogated one of them. Or, there's spells like Zone of Truth, cast Zone of Truth on someone. Um,
in hindsight, we're terrible players.
oh no.
Strategists? No.
I
Let's
don't
just fly in.
Yeah. Well, I think to think that that's having the viewpoint that you win and lose the game, and D&D just isn't like
It's a good
that,
point.
right?
No,
D&D
true.
we're just having fun, and sometimes those decisions that maybe weren't strategically the best can be the most fun. So I
That
wouldn't
is
take
true.
anything away from what players do because it's a game, you're having fun. Like, you know,
I have
yeah,
to do it. I have to do it. It's just a game.
but yeah. But there are ways to do it though. Like you could have have maybe had a familiar animal companion. You could have maybe gone to the nearest settlement and questioned people. Maybe somebody's been in there before. I mean, they have to get food and supplies somehow in a floating
Yeah.
castle. So yeah, it's just another way of playing the game, but I wouldn't say it's the only way. Because if you're
No, I
if
mean
you're
that's true.
yeah, if you're only concerned about strategy and the numbers of the game and surviving, then you're becoming a min maxer and you know, that's not what the game is really made for. I mean, it's again, that's a way to play, but
Yeah. I mean it's definitely it's okay to have your Leroy Jenkins moments.
for sure, for sure. Yeah.
Exactly. Which we've had plenty. Like
Oh yeah.
there's that's not the only one because I'm thinking all the other ones I'm kind of popping to my head now. I'm like, yeah, Andrew's right. Yep, it's okay. You didn't die, or maybe one person died, but who cares? They came back as somebody else. But so that yeah, as Andrew said, that's kind of it. Our sort of top things of what are important in time in terms of players rooting their way through a dungeon. You don't want to go. You don't want to be too gentle, but you don't want to be too brash. You just kind of want to be somewhere in the middle. And as you rightfully pointed out, it's just a game, so you're supposed to be having fun. So who cares?
Mhm.
Set fire to your hair and start running through the dungeon and see what happens. Because interesting things can happen. Um, so next week, we will be talking about something else. It'll be great. It's right here in my notes, but I'm gonna shh. It's a secret. You can't know this one because it's way too sensitive. There are so many people involved. There's gonna be 80 people in this podcast that day. It's gonna be a blast or something. Of course, everything that we've talked about, any important links and stuff like that, they'll all be down below in the description of the video. And I certainly hope you guys can follow them up and also tell people about the show. You are out there. I hope we're doing something you like. And of course, I hope, Andrew, if you put the special link where you can leave us a message on the podcast and we'll get an audio piece that we can either then play or at least respond to, it'll be great. I think more people should do that because getting involved, us just talking is one cool thing. We're kind of, okay at it. But if you guys talk at us and give us some information or tell us some stuff we should talk about, the show will get even better. So thank you all again, and we'll see you next week. Bye bye.
Check out the Kickstarter
Oh,
later.
yes, don't forget that. Don't forget the Kickstarter. It's very